and welcome to another episode of The Focal Thought. My guest today is Tomás Prower. How are you, Tomás?
I'm doing really well, really well.
Good, good. That's great. I'm excited to speak with you today. You're an international author of some best-selling books. I believe it's three books that you've got: Morbid Magic, Queer Magic, and La Santa Muerte, right?
That's it. That's it.
Awesome. And on your bio, it says you're a natural born globe trekker, which is awesome to hear. And you're very fluent in English, French, and Spanish. And you're actually a cultural liaison for the French government in South America between France, the US, which is the United States, Chile, Peru. And you've also traveled extensively in the Amazon jungle. And that's the focus that I want to speak with you about in today's episode. And you also do some work with writing fiction and, some literary work as well, where you give private lessons and also online lessons. And little known fact, you had a stint as a night shift mortician, so working in a mortuary, which is very interesting. I guess it ties in with, spirituality and mysticism, doing something like that.
Kind of. 2008 was a strange year, and capitalism kind of started to collapse upon itself, and I needed a job. So through connections, because in this world, everything is absolutely who you know. And so I had some connections, needed a job to pay student loans really fast, and was like, hey, are you down to work in a cemetery, in a mortuary? I was like, I need to pay these bills. I'm down to do anything. And thus began that adventure.
If I may ask briefly, what was your first night like there on the job?
Busy as all hell. Death never really stops. And it was just a crash course on everything. The first night was just supremely busy, and even made even more so because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So everything had to be taken slower, much to, I'm sure, everyone's enjoyment on the team, because they had to teach me. So not only did we have a lot of cases, a lot of clients to pick up, prepare, store, categorize, and all that jazz, but everyone had to move a lot more slowly so they could teach me, which was very kind of them, but it just made things even more hectic. But it was interesting. It was interesting.
And had you had any experience before that working with the dead?
No, I haven't really dealt with that before, not on a hands-on, elbow deep into the chest cavity kind of level. But no, it was fine. It was fine. I mean, I had previously to that, I had really gotten all my existential dread out during a time when I thought I was going to legitimately die. And so I didn't have any of that. What happens about my mortality? Oh my God, I'm peering into the face of the void when I look into this corpse. None of that was happening. None of that was happening. And by then I had already become a devotee of La Santa Muerte, which requires some connection to death itself. So I was well equipped and able to go as fast as I could without existential dread and psychological issues popping up day one.
Wow. So, I mean, just like, going from two extremes, from, being surrounded by living people and, working with the dead, you also lived in California, and then you went to spend some time in the Amazon rainforest, right?
I did. I'm actually born and raised in California. I'm a Los Angeles kid.
Okay.
And I went to South America during my study abroad time. And again, everything is who you know. And so by interacting with different people and meeting people and having been trilingual, I was able to really meet the right people and say the right things and get myself hired by the French government to do work, which then allowed me to travel throughout South America, with one of the extended assignments being in the Amazon jungle.
Wow. Now, the rainforest is something that really surprises me because, my sort of surface level understanding of the rainforest was, a lot of forestry, a lot of, weather conditions in terms of it being moist and humid, and, the species that they have there. But, on further research, you actually get to know that, the Amazon, there's about 9 different types of, I think, nations over there. in terms of indigenous territories, over 3,000. The population is, what surprised me, about, 30 plus million people in the Amazon area. And, where I am in Canada, we're at about 37.5 million. So it's almost the size of Canada in terms of population, at least 300 plus ethnic groups. And to know that humans actually settled there about, 11,000 years ago, which is drastically different from the impression I have built in my mind when I, think of the Amazon. So what was your first experience like? So where did you show up, and what was that like the first couple of nights?
The first couple of nights were okay. I flew into, and I was really based out of the city of Iquitos, which is in the Peruvian Amazon. So if you're familiar with the map, think of the Amazon and then try to go as far west as you can until you kind of hit the Andes Mountains. And that's kind of where I was. Iquitos is famous for being what they like to call the fountain of the Amazon River, because it's where the major tributaries kind of converge to create the Amazon River proper. So it's a good starting point for expeditions and things. And it's a tiny town that has no access by road. It's only river accessible and air accessible. So I flew into town. And day one was interesting because there's no real airport. You land on the plane, they pull out the old kind of staircase to go outside down the airplane. And there's a rotting airplane carcass on the field, that no one wants to clean up, which isn't a good sign. And it was amazing because I love hot weather. If it's 100 degrees plus, I feel excited. I feel very vibrant. So I loved it. That wave of super humid, super hot air hitting me, I felt at home. But the city is like any other city. It's a mid-sized city. There's, a plaza, it's like any Latin American city. There's a plaza. There's the main cathedral. There's a lot of people, hustle bustle, living their daily lives. But it's also a super tourist destination because of all the countries that the rainforest kind of hits, the quote unquote safest one is Peru. So this is kind of like the safest city to be if you're going to do anything in the Amazon. So a lot of other countries take advantage of that. And this is the tourist destination, which gets a little ugly because, and very controversial if we're going into it, because it's very metropolitan. You see a lot of foreigners, people not native there. And it's also extremely poor. One of the unfortunate things I saw in the city, and this is all before I went into the deep jungle, but the city is it was wonderful and it was horrible. It was wonderful because it's this wonderful progressive mecca in the middle of a very hostile territory. I mean, Iquitos itself hosts South America's annual Miss Amazonas Gay pageant, which is a huge trans female celebration of queerness and a beauty pageant right there in the middle of the Amazon jungle. That is where it has. The city, inaccessible by roads, has the biggest trans female pageant in the region in
Wow.
South America. Yeah, it's stuff like that that blows your mind. And everyone is so progressive. Everyone is so, it doesn't matter how you are, come as you are, however your demographics are, none of that matters. It's very communal, very accepting in a very natural way, because I've lived in many tourist destinations, Vegas, Reno, various cities in South America, Los Angeles, and people are only friendly to tourists because we want your money. We want you to feel safe so you can keep spending until we can drain you dry. We want you to get the hell out of our city and leave all your money. Not Iquitos. Iquitos was wonderful. They actually cared and wanted to know about you, fascinated by you, and cared. I made a friend there, and he showed me around the city, took me on a motorcycle ride throughout the jungle, showed me all the parties and where to go to. It was fantastic. But the sad side is the extreme poverty. You see these signs everywhere saying, no prostitution, because certain kinds of prostitution is legal in Peru, and the age limit kind of goes down to a questionable degree of what is acceptable by, I guess, Western European standards. And a lot of families, because there's no money to be had, you see families and parents pimping out their young underage children. It's very frowned upon, but it's kind of pseudo legal, and it's accepted because otherwise this child is going to starve and die. So you're going to pimp your child out, and abuse for sex work. And mind you, I'm all for sex work. I support sex workers everywhere, but not parents pimping out children. But then again, that child's not going to eat. That
How,
child,
in terms of the age, how low are we talking here in terms of?
as low as the tourist wants, which makes it a very dangerous kind of place. A lot of people go there for sex tourism. It's a very Thailand area because places turn a blind eye. The city needs to make money, and as capitalism grows, morality goes down. So, and there's more humans in the world now, which means there's less jobs, there's less space, there's more competition for resources, especially for jobs in a tiny little town. So it gets very ugly. And really, it's however low and however much you're wanting to pay, it can be delivered. That was very unfortunate to see.
So it's a gray area.
No, it is a black area, but you can get away with it a lot easier.
Okay, I see. So these are your first couple of days in Iquitos, and so you're not really going straight into the deep end. You're kind of getting your feet wet with being submerged into the heart of the jungle. So how long till you got into your first jungle experience?
It was probably about a week because all the major contacts are in the city, and then you have to supply, you have to get the team, you have to hire, the porters and various things, map things out. So a good week in the city of Iquitos before we headed out. But once you head out, we did river travel down the Amazon. Once you leave the city proper, it becomes mosquito central. Doesn't matter what kind of repellent you have. I was nonstop bitten by mosquitoes, which is the one part about the Amazon I didn't like. It's so bad that it's very hot, very humid there, but I had to wear layers and layers of jackets and jeans and stuff just to prevent being bitten. And the only temporary repellent is you go to these giant ant hills and hives where humongous ants are. Put your hand on the hive or the mound until you cannot see the skin on your hand anymore and it's covered with ants. And then you crush the ants, and whatever's in their biological liquids or innards, you smear that around your body, and it's a mosquito repellent, the only effective one for about an hour. And then you have to do it again. But it was like you cannot sleep at night. It never stops. You just have to grow numb and jaded from the pain. It is the one thing that makes me think I will never want to go back there. But all the positives outweighed that. That was awful. Absolutely awful.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in Canada here, the mosquitoes usually come out, I would say, on a decent day, maybe in the afternoon or the evening time, not really during the day where it's very hot. But over there, is it like all throughout the day or the same sort of weather concept here?
Oh no, and that's one thing for me. I grew up in Southern California where there's mosquitoes, but they don't really bother you. And in the deserts, they don't really exist. So it was like 0 to 100 for me. But it's all the time, constant, permanent. Just you can't. The only place that's free is if you're in a heavily urbanized area, or if you're on the river itself. If you ever go onto land or the banks, it's a constant swarm day and night. But if you go to a clearing or like a man-made field where there's villages or an urban area, they're not really there that much.
Got it. Okay. And it's very resourceful that they use these ants as repellents. I remember seeing that, when they're doing fishing, they're using plant-based poisons as bait, to attract the fish and kill the fish. So they have to be resourceful in the jungle out there, I imagine.
It is. And they have less access to stuff. I mean, it's not like they can go, down to a Walmart and, pick up stuff on the cheap. And what there is, it's too expensive. And, people aren't going to lower the price just because people are in need of it. That's when the price goes up. So, again, capitalism, but it's hurting people, especially in the Amazon. So they have to be resourceful out of necessity.
Sure. And what was your experience meeting, one of the local tribes in the jungle or the rainforest?
Oh, it was so surreal because we had on our team, most of our team, because they're from Peruvian Iquitos, spoke Spanish. So I spoke mainly Spanish to the team, but there's so many different various languages, within the Amazon that we had various translators. So everything had to be, it was like playing a game of telephone, just talking to anyone. I had to talk to one of our translators who spoke Spanish, who could translate into the native language that, some broken native language that would then translate it to the official, native speaker of that language who would then say it to the person we needed to speak to. So everything we had to say, even if it was just, oh, that's great. Yes, I will take one of those. It had to go through at least 4 people, which was difficult to do anything expeditiously. But no, it was weird because it blew my mind in that it looks exactly how a very stereotypical image from National Geographic would have you believe it looks like. I remember with the first city we docked up to, almost city, a clearing with some huts in it, really. People were wearing the native face paints, wearing clothes made out of just, local plants weaved together, local dyes, very traditional, heavy, very National Geographic, because again, the best way I can say it. But then, you look at these kids and they're all studying Algebra 3, out of Algebra 3 advanced mathematics math books, learning out via radio transmission. And it's fascinating because visually and superficially, it looks like the modern world, they've never had contact with the modern world. But once you start talking to them and you see them, you see, oh no, they have the same kinds of modern day problems that we all have. I mean, the kids are just worried about trying to get a good grade. It doesn't matter if they have, what Westerners would say are quote unquote weird piercings or strange, makeup and clothes. Yes, they're in those, but they're like any other high school student. They're worried about finding a date, falling in love, doing well in math, trying to please their parents. And, parents are parents wherever they are. They're trying to get their kids the best education they can, provide a living, doing these trades with people who go up the river. It's fascinating. So, I to this day, it still amazes me to see all that.
Wow. So would they go through, the various stages of life, such as, growing up, like you're saying, going to school, maybe working, starting a family, settling down? Would that all happen within the same area, or, do they sort of go up the river, and do they move around maybe like that, or?
Ideally, well, quote unquote, ideally, they do go upriver is probably the best way to do it, because and this is a phenomenon the world over. It's not just the Amazon, but the world is becoming very urbanized. And if you want to make a profit in this world, you have to move to urban areas. So there's these mass exoduses of people in rural lands throughout the world coming and making urban areas that much more overpopulated and overdense. So, I mean, let's say you're a kid. Let's say you're the smartest, most talented kid in that tribe who got the best grades from, radio satellite transmission studies. What are you going to do with all that in that little town? Nothing. How are you going to earn money within that little town? That little town doesn't generate money. It's not based off of coinage and money, except for the necessity of traders coming by and having to exist with the outside world. Money is a necessity because the powers that be force them to deal in that. But really, there's no chance of better life by staying there. So you have to move to the city. You have to get somewhere else, and you have to escape it. And so a lot of people go and then they bring remittances back. So they earn a lot of money comparatively, and then send a portion of that back to the city. So these cities become reliant upon industrious and educated youngsters traveling to the big city and then sending part of their salary back home, which then sustains the city. So that's why education is very important in a lot of the cities I visited, because they needed those kids to get those good jobs, because they needed them to get that money back. It was fascinating.
Wow. And it still seems that they have some sort of structure in terms of, education, commerce, government, just like we would in a regular city. Did you manage to go deeper where, there might be a tribe that's very localized and, not even, into sort of education or commerce or things like that? Just, they're mainly just hunting and, feeding themselves and breeding families?
No, I know that's not the fun answer, but it's no. But for 2 reasons. One, the modern world and the industrialness, cutthroat capitalism has infected the entire world as deep into the Amazon and every other jungle you could possibly imagine. You cannot exist in this world unless you sell your time and your labor for wages. So there's no tribe that doesn't exist without that. I mean, it's not like there's blank spots in the map. The Brazilian government knows where everyone is. The Peruvian government knows where everyone is. And those people have to pay taxes. I mean, it's not like they exist in the space of their own. So yes, they have to play the game and everyone is influenced. The only people who are not influenced are the, the quote unquote uncontacted tribes, the people whom no one in the West has ever met. And we continue not to, because then we would bring disease unto them. So our expedition was absolutely not going to seek out anyone who has never heard of a Westerner or has been, tainted by modern capitalism in any way, because we would kill them. I mean, not purposely, but just by meeting them, we would transmit diseases that they cannot resist. So those people are off limits.
Sure. And I believe that's what happened when the people were first discovered by Aurelian, right? When he had gone down on his expedition, and they brought rats from the ship with them, right? Just like with Christopher Columbus and things like that. With those voyages, you're bringing disease into a community that doesn't have exposure to that disease, and yes, they die. That's the sad truth about it.
Oh yeah, we brought a whole bunch of diseases into the quote unquote new world, and but they got us back. I mean, they brought syphilis into the old world and other things, so they didn't go down fight without a fight.
Wow. Are they welcoming of foreigners coming into their city and their village?
They're tentatively hesitant. They don't really. I got the sense that they didn't really enjoy it, but that they have to. And this is that thing where a lot of people like to reminisce or think about people who don't have a lot of money. Are like, those are the friendliest people. The poor people are most willing to share. The people without are always the friendliest and have a smile, while rich people are mean and miserly. That's true, because poverty in these regions of the Amazon are severely impoverished, which is part of especially in Brazil, a plan to make them so impoverished that they sell their lands to logging. But that's a whole nother conversation. But when you are so poor, you cannot afford to be mean. You cannot afford to say what you want. You have to smile, you have to bend, you have to acquiesce, because no one likes dealing with unpleasant people. If you are wealthy and you don't rely on anyone, you could be as mean and rude as you want, and you can survive just fine. A poor person cannot afford to be rude, cannot afford to be mean. And so when people are in such desperate straits of poverty, like in the places I visited, they have to be nice to you, because otherwise people like me and other research organizations will stop visiting, and they will have no more income. So they have to be nice, whether they want to or not, because otherwise they can't exist. So it's a weird thing where you felt that they would rather you not be there, but they kind of can't show it because that would be detrimental to their economy. If you visited any major tourist city in the US or anywhere in the world, it's the same thing. You go to Las Vegas, we don't like tourists. We want you to get the hell out. We don't even want you here, but we need your money. So, hey, come to Vegas. What happens here stays here. Hey, yeah, we love you. Here's all your comps. Come visit Hollywood. Oh, it's fantastic. We love visitors. No one in Los Angeles likes a tourist. We want you out. But we can't say that because the city relies on it. The same thing happens in the Amazon. They need that money, so they can't afford to be unkind, which is unfortunate.
Correct. Yeah, they have to bite their lip. And like you mentioned, though, with the logging, it's sad to see, because I think of the Amazon as nature's filter for CO2, carbon dioxide. I think from the 40 billion tons of CO2, the estimate that's produced, it absorbs about 5%, so about 2 billion of that. And then that is decreasing every year, right, with the logging. And there's something very magical that happens with the rainforest. There's a lot of phosphorus that is excreted out of the rivers, but is replenished with the dust that is coming from the Sahara Desert. That's fantastical to see. And then logging is definitely going to put a dent in all of this.
It is not so much logging. I think the biggest problem in the Amazon is really the world's need or desire to eat meat, because a lot of that logging is used for cow pasturage, and which doesn't turn very good profit. But as the world, or quote unquote developing nations, want to emulate and eat more meat, like the West and how it's so lauded here, the global demand for meat is growing. And it's this weird situation where, which is probably sums everything up well, where you have a country like Brazil who is killing and murdering as much as they can of the natives of the Amazon and logging as much of it as they can to grow livestock. Unfortunately, um, that's what they do because they are a developing nation. And it's where you go to the US and all the quote unquote developed nations, we all had our dirty side. I mean, you read any Charles Dickens book and you read how there was so much child labor everywhere and the skies were sooty from coal industrialization. And now that we've made it, we dictate, now you have to be green. Now you have to follow these environmental policies, which are good. But here's all these up and coming countries, China, Brazil, many within the Amazon reach, saying, oh, well, that's not fair because US, Western Europe, you all are the way you are because you went through that dirty phase of environmental destruction. We cannot get to where you are unless we do the same, which is true. So how can you dictate to us, Brazil and China, that we are polluting the environment? Well, of course we are. You did. Is the only way we can be like you. So how dare you tell us to be environmental? Just because you did it first means no one else can do it. And so it creates this weird political debate wherein they have to be environmentally degrading in order to be like the West or be an economic powerhouse. But the West is saying, no, you can't do that because it's bad for the environment. Well, so it's really weird. It's really tricky. And that's the conundrum of the Amazon today.
Sure, yeah. And with development, there is a dark side. I mean, there's the cost of natural resources, but then also the cost of human life. It's part and parcel of it, it seems.
True. I mean, hopefully, the one thing about global warming that's good is that all humans will be erased. So that's good. But until then, it's going to get pretty bad for the environment because it is very, at least the way I see it in my environmental travels, it is supremely egotistical and vain to say save the earth. The earth doesn't need saving. The earth is going to survive. It's the humans that can't survive. And I'm okay with them all going away, but a lot of people aren't, and it makes a lot of people sad. So you're not saving the earth, you're saving yourself. And as long as there's a desire for one up and placing money ahead of the environment and above all things, then whatever dictates money will rule.
Sure. And coming from a developed country like the USA, an advanced country, like the USA, and then going into these smaller cities in the Amazon, meeting the local tribes, they see you as coming from this developed place. I'm sure there's lots of things they can learn from you. But what are some of the things that you've learned from them that have really surprised you or changed maybe the course of your thinking or of your life trajectory?
I'll prelude that by saying, as a person from the United States, I never travel anywhere saying I'm from the United States. That's a good way to get yourself shunned. I always say I'm from California, which is true. And if you say you're from California, they love you because it conjures up images of Hollywood and movie stars. And, a lot of people are very aware that California is very progressive and very left-wing socialist liberal. So they're more acceptable and friendly towards you. So being from a person from California, they're a lot more open, willing to quote unquote teach you their ways. But really the biggest thing I learned, which may not be something to learn at all, but was really just how, I guess, not different everything is. I mean, humans are humans no matter where we are. And you go into a place thinking, oh, how different these people's lives live their lives and how different the cultures are. I mean, yeah, that's true, but deep down, everyone's the same. And if you can truly understand yourself as a human being, what motivates you, what scares you, and why you do what you do, you pretty much understand everyone else in the world. And so in order to understand and break through the cultural barriers, the success I had was just being very honest with myself and saying, why do you do this? Tomás, what are your demons that push you? What are the things you want? And it's the same demons and wants that push everyone when you get down to it. So just know thyself and you know the world. And that was the biggest thing I learned. And that helped me exponentially in everywhere else I've been to really just connect authentically with the local people. That and saying I'm from California, not from the United States.
That's interesting you say that because, the geography can change, the culture can change, the language can change. But like you're saying, the basic emotions are the same, jealousy, anger, joy, all of those things, humans share all of those. So no matter the setting, you'll go through the same emotions, through the course of the day. Your timetable, your schedule might change, but these basic people to people interactions, like you're saying, seem to be similar world throughout.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, we're all very related. We're all very connected, and to be human is something that a lot of people don't like to accept because we want to be gods and masters of the lands and earth. But just by being human is a way to connect with all humans. If you want to connect with the gods, go ahead and act uppity. But if you want to connect with people on earth, be down to earth.
Sure. No, that's great. Well, listen, thanks again for coming on this episode. It was really interesting to hear, some of your experiences with the Amazon, and the time that you spent there. And I wish you well in the work that you do. And, if people want to get a hold of you, is your website the best way for that?
No, it's actually not.
Okay.
I have it just to kind of make sure no one else bought, my name and put it up there.
Okay.
But the best place is probably social media. I'm on, it's Tomás Prower on all the social media. Twitter is probably the best way to reach me. I have an Instagram, Facebook. So yeah, hit me up on there. If you have any questions, I'll definitely help answer it. And if you can, if you have the budget and time, definitely visit Iquitos. I mean, the more tourists and the more money that you can bring in there, the less they have to rely on, questionable means. So help them out. They're a good city. They're a good city.
No, that's great. Thanks for mentioning that. Okay, and thanks again, for coming on the episode, and all the best to you.
Oh, same to you.
Thanks.